Hola, amiga, and welcome back to the Latina Leadership Podcast, the podcast for Latinas by Latinas, where every week we have real conversations about the issues and topics that matter most to our community. Topics like education, health and wellness, entrepreneurship, pay equity, and so much more. Get comfortable. We're bringing you another inspiring episode starting right now. Enjoy the show.
Well, hello, good morning, everyone. It's my birthday, and what a gift. I get to interview and speak to Jasmin. Hi, how are you?
First of all, a happy birthday, Queen. I really am grateful that I get to spend this day with you on your solar return. In astrology, we call birthdays solar return. So it's your solar return today. So I feel grateful. I feel excited to connect with you. And I'm very excited to connect with everybody listening, and we're all sharing something really special and common by tuning in. We're celebrating Olga's soul ascension around the sun. Hey, how perfect! You're talking to an astrologer, and we happen to be recording on your birthday. It was planned but not planned, right? It was planned
Right.
but not planned.
Right. Yes, I like that. I like that. Planned but not planned. It was meant to be. It was all the things all at once, but it's happening the way it's supposed to.
Always,
Yes.
absolutely.
Jasmin, I was blessed with you on my phone one day as I'm scrolling through Instagram, but I know that you have, your background and the amazing things you're doing are not limited to just that platform. But I just want you to know that's the world we live in, right? That's how we're connecting and reaching to people. But one of the main things was your handle, your name. I wonder if maybe we could start there with you talking about how you chose that.
Yeah. So first of all, you're telling me I should stay on Instagram? That I shouldn't leave? Because
Please don't go. Don't go.
this point, like the censorship and the being put on Instagram timeout and the algorithm for speaking so freely, it gets into you. It really affects your mental health and your spirit as a creator, first and foremost, as a human, and as someone who's trying to continuously provide community work of resources. And so the fact that, very recently we found each other. Very recently you found me on Instagram. I think it reminds me to stay on the platform because there is some hope. Yes. Well,
There is. I didn't realize. I know obviously as a culture, as a Latinos, and there's been so much censorship anyway.
Yeah.
A lot of it is because we're truth speakers. We can't help it. Do you know what I mean? But you talked about doing the community work, and that's that part too of the censorship where you're trying to bring healing and knowledge, obviously all the things. But maybe we can start there with how has that journey been with not just the censorship of Instagram, but that whole, right? Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting because when I first went online publicly doing this work, which was in 2017, this work, meaning just talking about spirituality, because there's so many different denominations in spirituality. It was very much a white Eurocentric new age space. So it was really safe, right? Instagram and all these meta platforms found it to be very safe, right? It was very, lovey-dovey, love and light, right? And I love that because we all start in that space. I think when we start dipping our toes and exploring in spiritual work and decolonial work. And there was a huge rise of infatuation and support in mainstream media, mainstream platforms, and particularly during the pandemic with this work. And during the first Trump administration, we started to see Meta shift more, right? With its guidelines and then imposing more censorship. And now that we're in a second Trump administration and we kind of see an oligarchy happening in real time, right, with Zuckerberg and all these other billionaires, the censorship is just getting worse and worse. So it's one of those things where you just kind of have to hope in a way that, you find your tribe, right? Your vibe will attract your tribe. And to continue dismantling these systems, we have to dismantle like the fear and the oppression through all the new modern tactics that they're going to impose on us, right? Through media, through AI, through our intellectual property, etc. So I think I kind of went on a tangent there. I don't know if I even answered
No,
your
no, it's
question.
okay because it's relevant. No, it's totally relevant because I think even with all the spiritual work that you do, which I'm coming from a place of like, I want to know more. Like I'm trying to
Yeah,
connect with my ancestry and my lineage, right?
yeah.
And it is, you're right. It's difficult when you are on these platforms where it's served on a platter to you in a
Mm-hmm.
certain way,
Mm-hmm.
but it's not always coming from the source, right? Our people and their voices. And so, no, I think it's all relevant, especially right now with what's happening, and the work that you do. Astrology being one of them, which is stigmatized, numerology stigmatized, right? Spirituality, especially from our ancestry, whether it be Maya, Aztec, Spanish, a combination of all of those. No, I think it's totally relevant because that's what we're living in right now. And people are they're looking to connect. You said they're trying to find their tribe, like quite literally, you
Mm-hmm.
know,
Uh-uh.
and it's hard to do that. So,
Yes.
no, I think you're right on point with that.
You spoke so much. You spoke so much to my soul at this moment. I want to add to that. Um, reconnecting with your ancestral lineages and being curious about your ancestral roots, whether it's just like your immediate generation, your immediate family, if you can go 2 generations back, 3 generations back, 6 generations back, whatever, all of it is valid, right? Reconnecting with our ancestral stories and our ancestral cultures is us rediscovering our truth. So that's what I meant
Mm.
earlier, is like it's safe to talk about spirituality when it's cotton candy. The crystals, and I love that. Like, I mean, I got crystals all over my house, okay? But the crystals to manifest, and the new moons to manifest, and when it's very PG, right? Because it's still keeping you at a surface level, right? Distraction
Mm.
of like, right? It's not really allowing you to dig deeper into the core truth of reconnecting with your ancestral lineages, aka the decolonial work. So when this work starts becoming very liberation focused, which is something I prioritize a lot, then it helps us reconnect with our truth, right? And it helps us get out of the distractions, right? It helps us awaken out of the detours, right? Awaken to our power, right? And we talked earlier about the
Mm.
assimilation, right? And doing this decolonial healing and reconnecting with your roots helps you tap into your power. And so these platforms, when we get too deep, too real, right? we're as a community, we're already a threat. But when we start owning how
Mm.
really powerful we are and we mobilize as a community, when we mobilize, we get shit done, right? Latinos, Latinas, like we get shit done. I mean, our families immigrated, right? They had no idea where they were going, what they were doing, but they got shit done and they got here. Yeah.
Absolutely. That's such a powerful thing you said with like, we find our power, we come together. I find, and like, correct me if I'm wrong, I think a lot of the times for me personally, accessing that power, because like I know it's there, but you're like, right? A lot of what happens with staying on this surface level of like spirituality or like, right, is fear. And it's hard to push past that blockage of fear because of, I believe, right, what's happened to our ancestors. It's carried on through their DNA where you couldn't be truly authentic yourself in a country where that was then going to be used as a weapon to
Mm-hmm.
point you out, to hurt you, to erase you, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so they had to kind of like, whether it was hiding their spirituality, their altars, their, right?
Mm-hmm.
Celebrations, whatever, holidays, all these things had to be suppressed to survive. And I know that in my body and my soul, but I don't know that intellectually. Like I can't tell you I read a journal where I saw that, but I know that. And so now I'm 42 today, by the way, 42-year-old me,
Mm-hmm.
um, instinctively wanting to tap into my power and my spirituality and my connection to the divine, but almost like, yeah, there's this hesitation of like, uh, maybe not want to be fully seen. And then sometimes I am fully seen and I'm like, yes, but this climate right now politically,
Mhm.
I mean, I don't want to curse, but like I almost cursed and said like, you know, damn, it's really fear based,
Mhm.
and folks
Mhm.
are afraid to go to protest, speak out, right? Like all these things, whether it's because of deportation. Now I'm going on a tangent, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
All the things. And so
Mhm.
I think that's why I think it's important to have um, beings like you that are pushing through that. I'm not saying you're afraid, but whatever insecurities you may have, you're pushing through it with courage
Mhm.
for people like me to see.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I appreciate your words, and thank you for seeing me. It is an intimidating, it's an intimidating time, right? To be seen in any sort of capacity. Um, in this in the way our society is set up here, and for me particularly, I've always been a very fearless person when it comes to speaking my mind and speaking out against injustices. I'm an Aquarius, I have a Libra moon. It's the core of my spirit, and I come from a family of activists. So, but to say I'm not daily living in continuous mindset work, meaning, yeah, I have my days where I'm scared. I have my days where I'm scared because, like, when you speak out so publicly, right, you get punished. And it reminds me of all my past lives. It reminds me of my abuela, my mom's mom, my grandma, who was a bruja, who was scrutinized, right? It reminds me of all the witches in Salem where, right, you speak out, you get burned. It's like, it's in a way, it's like all that ancestral and past life and collective trauma. It's so easy for me to sit in that fear and to maybe like throw my hands up and run away, but like all the more reason, like, this is the collective time where we have to confront the fear and sit with the conflict, because this is where the true integration of consciousness healing is happening, right? When we all decide to show up and to be seen, but it's intimidating. I get it, because there's very real repercussions with this administration. So
Yeah, that's seriously, and it's hard to avoid seeing that because we have social media, whereas our grandparents, right, they didn't have that. Obviously, we find out through, family ancestry and things like that. But talk to me a little bit about your connection with your grandma, because I
yeah.
just felt like my ear was like when you were saying that,
Uh-huh.
my ear was like my eardrum was moving. My name is Olga, by the way,
Mm-hmm.
and that was my grandmother's name. That was
Mm-hmm.
my mother's name, and she named me after her.
I love that.
So
I love
I want to know more. Talk to me about your grandma and your connection with her.
Yeah, and I just want to add, when people are named after certain ancestors, even when they've passed on, you definitely have a spiritual connection to them. Because your higher
Hmm.
self, your soul, and their soul in the spirit realm, I love to believe and theorize that, like, as spirits, we choose our names and we channel that to our parents. Our parents don't really pick our names.
To kind of tie that together, thank you for that, because I've never heard that before. My mother lost her mother when she was a child,
Mm,
and living in Guatemala, right? Grew up in Guatemala, and so really grew up an orphan, without
mm,
parents. And so
mm,
when she got married, got pregnant, back in the day, you didn't know what gender you were having. It was
mm,
just you're having a baby and you'll find out when the baby comes out. And she speaks to like, I knew it was a girl, because I just knew. And I knew it was going to be you and that your name would be Olga. And I'm like,
mm,
oh, you know? So I carry that with me. Although it was hard as a kid, named Olga in this space, it was hard, man.
right.
But now I'm like, yes, I hold that. So thank you. I've never heard that before.
Well, my grandma who practiced this work is my mom's mom. And
Mm.
she practiced it very publicly. I grew up witnessing her reading tarot, opening dimensions, talking about the portals she would go through. And, my little like 6 to 9 year old self, we'd be in the kitchen. She'd be telling my mom about crazy experiences the night before. And, my mom would really be freaked out. My mom actually shut it down because she was so overwhelmed by my grandma's experiences. And so it was
Oh,
conflicting because I had the fear, and I love my mom so much. And, she's so open to this now. And it's funny just how psychic she is now that she's embraced it, right? I mean, because if I have it, why wouldn't my mom have it,
right.
because my
Right.
grandma. Um, so it was a conflicting experience. I had so much love, affinity, and curiosity for my abuela. And I would sleep over and she would read my palm. She would teach me how to read palm, like then I go back home and my parents ask me, well, what'd you do at Abuelita's house? And then I'm talking
Right.
about, well,
Right.
I sat during her tarot sessions because she used to read tarot at home to pay her bills over the phone back in the day.
Mm.
She
Mhm.
did phone line
Oh,
tarot.
yes. Yeah.
She did phone
Okay.
line tarot.
Yeah.
And so it
Wow.
was like I go home to this very Catholic colonial household from this very witchy spiritual weekend with my abuela. And so as a child, I couldn't discern. I was so confused. I couldn't discern, like, why was it when I go to my grandma's house, those experiences were bad and I should be scared of them. And then I started fearing it. But she would still continuously, like, call me in. Like for my birthday, she would give me certain crystals. She would buy me books on Nostradamus in elementary and middle school. Like she was always there, just reminding me, like, don't ever lose it. Don't ever lose it. I'm here when you're ready. I'm here when you're ready. And so it was in my
Yeah.
early 20s when a former boss of mine, very witchy boss. I worked in music entertainment. She was a Gemini. I love her. I respect her so much till this day. And I remember in my interview, I was in my last year of college and I interviewed for this role. That was my dream job in music entertainment. And
Yeah.
my boss asked me, "So what's your zodiac sign?" And I thought, she's, this is like, okay, this is
Not usually asked at an
not
interview.
normal. And it
Yeah.
was in 2012. It was in 2012. And so I was like, I'm an Aquarius. And she's like, you're perfect, you're hired. I love Aquariuses. I'm a Gemini. We're air signs, we're gonna get along. And so throughout my whole career with her, she would remind me, she reminded me of my grandma because she would send me my horoscope daily. My boss would send me my horoscope for the day and be like, this is, for the
Wow.
whole team, like, this is what you can expect
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
your day. Like, here's how we're gonna move through it. And so she
I
kind
like it.
of reawakened that spirit in me. And then in my late 20s is when I really started apprenticing from my grandma. And then the last 2 years
Mhm.
before her death, she passed away in 2019. It was one
Mm.
of those things where I knew intuitively she was going to die soon. And so I wanted to get everything I could out of her. Not even just like how to learn and to be psychic and intuitive, but it was more so like, tell me your trauma. Tell me your stories.
Mm.
I'm here to hold space for you. You let it out. No one has ever taken the time to sit here and listen to you. No one's ever asked
Mhm.
you who hurt you, why you hurt, why does it hurt. No one's ever given her that opportunity. And so it was hard for her at first, because it was so triggering. But little by little, she opened up more and more. And so those were the stories I wanted. I wanted her to venerate her now while she was alive, why after she dies, right?
Right.
Tell and unpack all the unprocessed shadow work, and then tell me everything you can remember about your mommy and your papi and my mom's dad. They left my mom's dad when she was 9. So I wanted to reclaim that lost part of our lineage, and although it was so painful for her to talk about it, at the same time, after our conversation, she would say, thank you. I appreciate that. And it reminds me of, like, the good stuff that I had, that I can remember about such and such
Yeah.
person. So
Yeah.
I'm s I miss my grandma all the time. I'm gonna get emotional. I wish she was still here.
Oh.
There's so much I wish we could have done differently. But she's with me in spirit. And part
Oh.
of part of why I do this work, which I have to continuously remind myself, is, for her legacy and her honor. Because she was
Mhm.
ostracized and she was demonized, not only by society, but by family members, by her own
Mm.
siblings, her own family.
Yes.
So yeah.
Yes.
Hmm.
Yes. And that's probably the most painful is when you are treated that way by your own. But you got to be the difference.
Hmm.
You got to be the difference for her. Do you feel like you said you oftentimes have to remind yourself why?
It's like continuous entrepreneurship in general, but when you do this work where it's tokenized, it has its moments where it's a trend and then everyone loves it, right? It's tokenized. And
Yeah.
especially indigeneity, right? Like I'm not calling myself indigenous, but my roots and my cultural traditions are indigenous to the lands that my ancestors came from, right? That I implement and I
Hmm.
live by. And so
Hmm.
it can sometimes veer you into a very self-defeatist mindset because this work is seen as, well, it must be based off of humility, and there's a lot of poverty mindset around this work and people not investing and believing in the value of this work, right, spiritually but monetarily as well. And then you live in such a colonial capitalistic society, and you have to just balance that fine line of like, I'm having a human experience, I need to sustain my livelihood, but I also want to give resources to community. So it's like, how do I balance, right, free resources, affordable
Mm.
resources, but also things that people believe that they're worthy enough to invest in. So that's what I mean by you have to remind yourself daily, because there's days where it would be easy for me to say F this and go get a, a corporate job, but like I can never be that person
Right.
ever again, ever. I just can't. Girl, I
Right.
wouldn't be able to. I'd be fighting with all the white
Right.
men in the office. I just can't.
No, and and you're not the only, that's not a singular experience by any means in this community, for sure.
I
For
commend
sure.
everybody in
I
these
want
white
to,
collar. I just want to say I commend everybody in these white collar spaces. Thank you. Thank you for what you're
yeah,
doing.
it's not easy. It's
uh-uh.
not easy. No, it's
Mhm.
not. Do you feel like, because I kind of just feel like I need to circle back to your grandma a little bit and
Yeah.
how that, do you feel like, is that where you had, you already have had, like, I hate these token words, but like spiritual awakening? I don't know what else to call it aside from like self, discovering of your spiritual. Did that happen before, during, after? Like at what point? Because it's
Yeah.
such a, it's, I mean, the gift of making space for someone to dump their trauma and heal that, like, that, who taught you that, right? Where did
Yeah.
that come from? Because like even me at 42, I just recently started therapy, like
Yeah.
finally, because I was like, I got right, like I got to fix this. And I didn't even start that till I was in my 40s, because that's not typically taught in our cultures, right?
Yeah.
But how did you know to do that? Or had you have already had that awakening? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I get it. I think we have several spiritual awakenings. I think they're in
Mm.
a continuum, just like the waves of the ocean, right? They're just in continuum, right? Um, so that specific era of my life with having the awareness, right? The activation of like, this is what I feel deeply compelled to do to give back to my elder. Right.
Hmm.
Not only to ancestrally clear, but to also show love. I think that comes from a place of like, it arises from it's birthed from empathy. It arises from empathy, right? And then it's propelled through compassion. And I believe that a lot of our spiritual awakenings are not necessarily triggered by external people and external experiences. We like to project that, right? Everybody's the mirror to us. But I believe our spiritual
Hmm.
awakenings are merely just ego based, right? Low vibrational
Okay.
ego
Tell
based
me more.
experiences, right? All of my spiritual awakenings have been when I needed a good kick in the ass from the universe, when I needed to confront my toxic ego, right? So I can then ascend into the next phase of consciousness, which is basically self awareness. So going back to like, how did I kind of know or register to do that for my abuelita? I think it was, again, a place of empathy,
Hmm.
and maybe, with all due respect, the parentified daughter in me coming out.
Oh.
I'm so used to eldest daughter, right? I'm so used to, at a very early age, holding space for adults. Okay, we're not going to get into how unhealthy that is, right? And how wrong or
Hmm.
right that might be.
Hmm.
We already know. But so I think it came from a very early age as a trauma response, right? And then
Got it.
also from a deep place of like, in a way, my inner niña seeing my abuela's inner niña. And every day I see my mom's
Mm.
inner niña and the her inner niña in them, right? And so just kind of
Mm-hmm.
like my inner niña to them inner niña being like, let me hold your hand right now, you know?
Oh,
Let me show you how
oh, I'm
much
gonna
I
cry.
fucking let me show you how much I fucking love you.
That's really sorry, I feel a little emotional.
Mm-hmm.
That's hard to hear because I recently, through therapy, right? There finally was this moment of of me saying to, right, the other person out loud, like, oh my God, I had this moment where I was talking to my daughter, but it was no longer my daughter, it was me. And she was crying, she was having a hard time with something. And it's exactly what you're describing as my child is there and she's crying and about whatever it was. And but immediately I was looking at myself. Urgh,
Mhm. And that's the
damn it.
beauty. That is the divine feminine energy. That is the beauty, the richness, the wealth, and the power of being a woman in this
Mm.
lifetime, in this experience.
Jasmine, what the heck? Not on my birthday, okay?
I'm sorry.
I can cry tomorrow. Not today. Actually, no, crying is very good, everybody. No, no, no.
Yeah.
I know I'm all like, bring it back, bring it. Actually, crying is a great thing and it helps you regulate. And I am able to teach that to my children now, whereas
Yes.
I was taught the opposite. Our parents were taught the right. Like, so, no, I
Mhm.
thank you for that because I think that's important too. The parentified daughter is something that is trending, but we all know culturally that's just, I didn't even know. I'm like, parentified daughter. Oh, that's a name. That just describes me. Like, what do you mean? Again, not a singular experience. Many cultures, especially in our culture,
Mhm.
that is a collective experience for sure. So,
Yeah.
um, let's talk a little bit about tarot because I really like. I'm curious, but I don't. You know what I mean? It's one of those things where I'm like, oh, what is that? And I know I'm not the only one feeling that way, but I happen to know that you have one, if not two, decks, right? That you've
Yeah.
created. Talk to me about that.
Yeah, yeah. I've birthed my own oracle decks. I think eventually I'll do a tarot deck. Right now
Oh,
I'm
I'm sorry, I
birthed.
called it a tarot deck, didn't I?
It's
See,
okay.
that's
No,
my
no, no. It's all good. I mean, a deck is a deck. You use them for divination, right? Um, and so my curiosity with tarot again began when I saw my grandma doing readings literally to pay her bills. And
Mm-hmm.
she would read me my own tarot when I was again 9 years old, right? So I
Okay.
always knew tarot as like this really like again, here's the childlike mind. I knew it as a fun thing to do, right? Like tarot was fun, right? It was
Okay.
a vehicle of exploration and curiosity. And then when I got older, I was taught that it was demonic, right? Opened up portals, etc. And so
Right.
tarot definitely opens up portals, meaning it opens up a portal into our subconscious minds. That's what essentially tarot is. It's reading energy. It's a tool to read energy, and it allows you to understand all the different probabilities that you as the creator can explore in different avenues, right? Here's the current state of energy, right? Based on how you're embodying your energy and how you're manifesting the current intention. But there's also
Mm,
this path that you can go down with this intention that can happen, right? And then it also reminds you, tarot is a beautiful tool to remind you to go inward. It's such a wonderful tool to self-reflect. And that's what I teach a lot of my students because I teach tarot for beginners.
mhm.
And I remind them like tarot is mostly a very self-reflective tool. Like that's how we can use it productively instead of leaning on it in another form of escapism and spiritual codependency.
Mm.
Mhm.
Okay. Okay, because I feel like we're even talking about quantum physics at this point, but yes. Okay.
Mhm.
So, so
Absolutely.
it's not this like, let's put a quarter in and hear my future. It really is so much more deeper than that.
It's so much more deeper than
Absolutely.
that, and but it can also be that.
Oh, okay. What do you mean? Like
It
dual
it,
service? What do you mean?
it just depends on the intention you're bringing into the space and the intention of the reader. Really like the depth of, where you want to go with the tool, but it could be
Mm.
simplified, it could be nuanced. It just I think as a reader, you have to gauge who you're working with, right? And then also bring in your core values and the integrity as a practitioner and a facilitator, whether it's with tarot, whether it's Reiki, whether it's with, pendulum, whatever it is, right? As a practitioner, I mean, I'm not saying there's a wrong or a right way to be a tarot reader. Like, I don't care. Like, I know people who read tarot who work with demons. Like, that's their practice, that's their karma. I don't really care as long as they're not hurting and harming other people. So, yeah, people like to mm, give us this moniker of like, oh, we're fortune tellers, and it's like, well, actually, yes, we are. But also, actually, like, don't dumb down my profession either, because I could read you to filth and tell
Oh,
and tell you where you need to really self reflect.
yeah. Oh, you know what? That's a good point because there's all these stigmas and that fortune teller, right?
All the
Stigmatization along
time.
with
I get treated like a party
the group.
trick. The minute people find out I'm psychic, read me. Do you feel someone in the room with me? At this point, I don't take it personal, but it can still be very exhausting. It's like pony trick. Let's hire the cheap magician,
Mhm.
at the child's party to pull the rabbit out of the hat. Every now and again, I'll give them a little
Mhm.
something just so they could shut up and get off my ass and leave me alone, so I can enjoy my
Right.
cake.
Right. There's so many different there's so much of that anyway though with people who just wanting to be like perform when you're creative,
Yeah.
right? When you're doing spiritual work, right? It's like perform now, and you're like that's not how it works. Actually, I don't even know how to tap into that all the time, right? Like I can't turn it on and off like that either. So that's
Yeah,
difficult too. I think with people that are curious because they maybe unintentionally or like perform, right?
I get
But
it.
but maybe it's rooted from curiosity, but most of the time it's ignorance, that's for sure. Yeah,
Yes, yes, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, you can't sit there and cry all day if you're gonna do this work and be in constant victimhood, you know?
that's true because then you go
Yeah.
back down to fear. Talk to me
Mm-hmm.
a little bit about because you're saying you've been in spaces where it's right, it's turned into that. Is that the point where when did you make a career change? Because it sounds like you're saying you're doing all this work, like this has really become your life, your career, your
Oh
work.
yeah, it's my
You
career.
talked a little bit about monetizing and right, but at what point? Because you said you were in the music industry, and then
Yeah.
when did that shift happen for you?
I just and you helped me like click something. And this isn't to be patronizing or judgmental, but now that I like look back on those experiences of where like people kind of expect you to perform, right? And like prove and also validate like why you identify as said label, right? Why you identify as a bruja, why you identify as a psychic, why you identify as a intuitive,
Hmm.
right? Prove it to me, right? Like even if it's just for shits and giggles, like, oh, do you feel my grandma, or like, what, read me, what do you feel, right? And it actually, for me personally, I can't speak for everybody, but those type of experiences actually come from Latinos. White people don't do that to me
Ooh.
because it's much more of a liberal accepting space, right? In new age white realms, right? People, the minute I say like I'm a psychic or whatever, like they're not asking me, right, to prove my resume or to kind of just start performing. It's when I'm around other people of color, specifically Latinos, Latinxes, they're the ones who immediately, and I think that goes down to, again, like the decolonial work that we still haven't done yet, right?
What do you think that is? Are we saying? I mean, obviously, yes, it's the work we have to do to.
It's religious
But what do you
colonialism.
think that is?
It's religious
Mm.
colonialism. We've been taught to either fear this work, judge it,
Hmm.
reject it, or we make it, a puppeteer kind of game. It's like we just, in general, regardless, we just don't take it serious.
I'm going with you in the direction you're going in because I'm what I like in my words would be self hate, right? Like you hear a
Okay.
lot about that in every single like in the black community and the colorism and the right because of past trauma and what they were taught to hate and it a lot of what you're saying to me sounds like this self hatred of like our own people
We're so deeply disconnected from our spiritualism, our spirit. Like, how could esoteric Essa Jasmine, let alone Olga, right, connect to these visions and have these godlike, pure, safe visions channeled from, right, source, God? It can only come from a priest. It can only come, right? It can only come from whoever the colonial authoritative voice said in the religious sector, right?
Yes.
Who exactly. So you see how it's like it's such a joke, right? Like I'm in such disbelief that anyone can do it because I've been told I can't even do that for myself, aka trust my intuitive discernment.
Right.
So yes,
Right.
totally the self-hatred that it's just
Yep.
so programmed into our psyche we don't even realize it.
It's
And that's how we self-sabotage.
ah, that's a whole nother one. Self-sabotage is a whole nother one. But it's rooted in all of that and not seeing ourselves in our own spaces
In our own
with people
godlike
that look like
divinity. Yeah, godlike divinity. Godlike divinity, right? It's spiritual oppression is spiritual slavery. That's what it is. We're going to disconnect you from your
yes.
source of wealth, which is your inner source of abundance, which is AKA your belief in your worthiness, your self-esteem, right? And how you believe you can show up and receive, how much you believe you can receive without having to struggle.
What advice would you give people then that are interested, encouraged, afraid, like all the things, but mostly it's like, what advice would you, extend to people that are brave enough to be interested in knowing more?
Mhm.
Because where do you start? I'm like, ooh, I just started therapy, but now I want to look in, like I want, right? And I just kind of am allowing myself to wherever it goes because I have a busy life and the kids and the work and the emotions and the spirituality of it all. Um, it's a lot, but what would be a good piece of advice you think?
Yeah. So I love talk therapy. I'm a believer in therapy. Um, I believe it's a good start. And so going back to your question, where should you start? Well, my thing with therapy is it's very logical based, right? It keeps you in the mind. And a lot of times we go into therapy because we're so in the mind, in the thoughts, right? In the thoughts, in the trying to rationalize the thoughts. And doing spiritual work, doing liberation work, doing healing work, you have to get out of the mind and into the body. So where do you start? I want you to get into the body. I want you to feel, not think. To be a powerful psychic, to be a gifted intuitive, you feel, you don't think. When you read tarot, you feel, you don't think. So we've been taught again to get so disconnected from our bodies, so disconnected from our spirits, right? It's literally mind games. It's literally like Bob Marley says, free yourself of your mind from mental slavery, right? No one but yourself can free you of your own thoughts. Get into the body. Well, what does that mean? Well, first of all, stop rejecting your body, start loving your body. And that's as simple as take care of yourself. Go to the doctor. How many of us grew up in families where we had elders who rejected the hospital? And I get it because, like, again, some of that is that indigeneity, right? Like, we heal ourselves. Like, they may not even remember it, but it's so far down the line, but it's still subconsciously rooted. Like, we heal with Pachamama, right? We
Mm.
heal with Mother Tierra. We heal with the herbs, right? We heal. So I can understand how some of that is sub influenced, but we've also been taught to just work, 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 self reject, self hate, put yourself last, right? So come back into the body. So as a mom, as full-time workers, people with juggling many responsibilities, you have to make time to connect with the body. Mindfulness, breath work. You've been dealing with a pain in your body for years. Why are you living in pain? That's not even normal. You shouldn't even be doing that. Go take care of that, right? Doing
Yes.
activities like flexibility, mobility, stretching, walking, hiking. You have instant downloads and you get those endorphins the minute you go out in nature and you walk around the trees. I want you to get back into your body. When you're around nature, when you're connecting with the land and you're connecting with your body, that is easiest and strongest way you start channeling and accessing not only your higher self, but the messages that the ancestors and the spirit totems want to give you and the animal totems want to give you, you know? So I love talk therapy. I love the quantum healing. I'm all about hypnotherapy. I'm all about all of that stuff. But the most simple thing is literally get into your body and start feeling. And that also means whatever emotions you've been bypassing, you've been rejecting because you don't know how to sit with conflict, you're conflict avoidant.
Mm,
You have to start
mhm,
sitting with that because then you release it
mm.
and get more familiar with it and you start understanding how to use it as a vehicle of productivity.
Oh, listen, we could go into three different things just on that alone of the self care of it all,
Yeah.
right? And the
Hmm.
avoidance and even the anxiousness of running to conflict sometimes, connecting with nature. Oh, Lord knows I'm trying to do that more. It really does make a difference. It
Hmm.
really does. And talk therapy not being stigmatized and just talking, if you can't talk with your own family members, because again, sometimes that's where, right?
Yeah.
You can't talk to
Yeah.
your own family members, but you can talk to a therapist, you can talk to a friend. Absolutely. I want to kind of like circle back
Hmm.
on one thing before we go, and that's to talk about, because there's so much out there, astrology, numerology, right? Which we haven't even, like, I feel like we didn't even really like fully dive into the astrology of it all. I'm still trying to learn too. I grew up with my mom. Like, my mom can just, you tell her your birthday and she's like, oh, you're a this, you're an Aries, right?
Oh, I
And I'm
love
still
that.
like, wait, what are the dates? Hold on, what are the dates? Hold on, when's your birthday? Like, I'm still Googling what. Um, but there's so much to that as well. And I think folks, again, sometimes it becomes the pony trick astrology,
Hmm.
and numerology. We didn't even talk about that. I have my own like personal connections with a number. I can't tell you why. I can't tell you why. Since I was a little girl, it was written on all my book covers back when you would cover your own books, with paper or
Yeah.
bags, paper bags.
Yeah.
Um, but it wasn't until like maybe, I don't know, 5 years ago, um, I was like adding up all of my, like, I added up all the dates in my birthday
Mhm.
and it adds up to multiples of three. And I'm like, okay. And then I added up every child's birthday individual. And I'm like, oh, and then my husband.
Uh-huh.
And then just to really, I added up all of our birthdays. How are they all either a three or a multiple of three? How?
Yeah.
Right? So I'm like, okay, no one convinced me of that. I came across that on my own. And again, it's trendy and numerology and people are doing all that. And I'm like trying to push what is it? The bushes. I'm like, no, no, no. Like there's something there. As someone who's like, oh, that's something. I'm curious. I want to know more, but I don't want to be misled either. I just know what seems real. I'm telling you, ever since I was like 4, I've written the number 3 everywhere.
Yeah.
I still don't fully know what it means, right? But I know that that's something. So I kind of want to circle back to that a little bit because I know we've had this beautiful conversation about um, grandma, right? But I feel like that's something. Like if I were listening to us and I just figured out, like, wait, when I add up my birthday, all the days and the numbers, and it doesn't matter which way, and my husband and my like, that's something. What can you share with us? Maybe even just like a little bit of like
Yeah.
numerology.
Yeah, absolutely. So we all have like personal numbers. I like to say you can call them personal angel numbers, whatever makes you feel more comfortable leaning into this realm. We all have personal numbers, and numbers are vibrational frequencies. So every number has like a definition of what its vibration is, right? A 7 vibration is this as opposed to a 3 vibration. And one of my favorite things about doing this work is when I get to look at people bring in their families. Like I've done charts for newborns, like literally their first week out. I've done twins, right? I've done mom, dad, and all the 4 kids. And it's one of my favorite things. I geek out because looking at your charts and all of your numerologies, you guys have shared sync commonalities. And going back to like seeing how you guys all have like variations of 3 in your birthdays, to me, that is an indicator that you guys obviously are soul family. You're so interconnected in terms of like your soul karma together, and you've absolutely had past lives together. This isn't your first lifetime as family members at all. Yes. Now, going into when you were younger and you were channeling the number 3, when we're children, we are so open to our higher self, and we're so open to all the spirits in the spirit realm. So I always tell people, when people feel lost, disconnected, they want to figure out their life purpose, or even like when they sit with me today at whatever age they're at, and they're like, I want to find happiness. I want to start doing things for me. Go back. Go back to the inner child, at 3 years old, at 5 years old, at 9 years old, right? We have different ages that are significant for the inner child. And whatever you were channeling, if you wanted to be a veterinarian, if you wanted to be a paralegal, if you wanted to be a painter, a musician, your childlike essence knew that that was one of your soul talents, one of your skills, right? So whatever you were channeling, whether it was like specific numbers, specific ideas, poetry, whatever, trust and believe that that was unbiased and that was coming from you, just really tapped into your core sense of self before you were told to be who you were. And that's why I love that quote. I'll wrap it up on this. That's why I love that quote that says, the creative adult is the creative child who survived. And one of the biggest things I ask in my one-on-one sessions with my clients when we do one-on-one spiritual coaching is, do you believe you're creative? Because even to be an intuitive, to be a psychic, you have to lean into and start opening, expressing, trusting, and creating literally your creative self. Everybody's creative. I don't even care if you're a mathematician, if you're scientific, if you're logical, if you have an engineer mind. You all have a creative soul, a creative extension. It was just shut down early on for survival or for whatever, right? So to get back into happiness, to healing the inner child, to reconnecting with the inner child, to getting out of depression, to finding your life purpose, to opening up your psychic abilities, all of it comes down to your creative source. And that is at the sacral chakra. And that's why sex and sexuality and sensual liberation and orgasms, that sits at the sacral. That sits where your creativity and your pleasure and your joy and your inner child sits. So if you have sexual trauma, if you're sexually repressed, if you're sexually super conservative, if you don't even believe you're creative, you've shut that down, then you have a sacral chakra blockage, and we need to heal that. We need to work on that. We need to liberate that. We need you to be free there. We need you to embrace it. We need to access enjoyment, right? So yeah, that's
You
what
are
I would
speaking to our people right now. First of all, the sexual trauma, that's a whole nother episode that we're going to have to
We're
record,
gonna have
right?
to do a whole
Absolutely.
episode on that. Like for real, for
Oh, when's
real.
your birthday? Maybe we do it on your birthday then.
My birthday passed. I'm in Aquarius. It was
Oh,
January.
are
Yeah.
you?
Uh-huh.
Okay. You see, I told you I don't know the dates, girl. I'm like, when Aquarius was I mean? I know my husband's a Pisces. That's all I know.
So his just
And
passed
my daughter's
too.
a Virgo.
And she's a
Yeah.
Virgo. Oh, I love
Oh,
that.
yeah, he
Yeah.
just had a birthday. We went to Cancun for his birthday. That's
Right?
why we were there the week of his birthday. Yeah.
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 Very nice.
Jasmine, people need to know, how do they find you? How do they connect with
I
you?
would
Talk to
appreciate
me.
that. Yeah. Thank you so much for extending the
Yes, they need
opportunity.
to know.
Yeah, yeah.
They need to know. And I know Instagram is, don't take us off Instagram. We still want to be here Instagram, but there are so many different platforms now. So what is the best way for
Mhm.
folks to?
Definitely. Yeah. Follow me on Instagram, interact with my content there. Also, you can follow me on TikTok, interact with my content there. But if you want to like support my work, right now I'm very political focused with my astrology and doing a lot of like decentering the fear propaganda around the political space, and how we can use esotericism formats like astrology, right, to ground ourselves and to maneuver and successfully thrive through this administration. I'm doing all that on my Patreon, which is www.patreon.com, patreon.com /esoteric ESOTERICSA. And on my website, sulluminati.com, you can book one-on-ones with me. So I offer astrology, tarot, spiritual coaching, which is just all encompassing of all the occult forms. And I have a lot of events people can book me for events in person, in SoCal area. And I have a lot of free columns and writing that I've done for different, magazines like Cosmopolitan, Pop Sugar, Shape Magazine. Um, and
Any in the works that you want to share? Any
any
recent ones that we can look out for?
if you could actually just honestly, the biggest way you could help me out, all of us listening, is if you could continue helping to consume and fund Latinx media. The minute you see we have a biopic on Netflix, the minute you see we have, a reality show, on a streaming service, or the minute you see that there's a Latin funded media publication, um click the links, watch it. Like, that's the only way we're going to keep getting our stories funded and told. There's a lot of
Yep.
defunding happening, especially with what's happening with DEI. A lot of Latinx media is closing down, going out of business, severe budget cuts. Like, I have seen so many editors get laid off, companies close down. That means I'm out of work. So literally, please, if you can, just click, read, share, comment, watch, donate, keep journalism
Yeah.
alive. If you can, subscribe for a couple months to the LA Times. We have a great Latino sector on LA Times, Delos, Los Angeles. I don't write for that team, but they're every day on the verge of just hanging on by a thread, just media in general. So media and journalism is how we will be able to keep telling not only our stories, but discerning through the smoke and mirrors, and making sure that, lobbying isn't happening, and that we keep the credibility of journalism alive, because that is the point of journalism and media.
Right.
I went to school for public relations and journalism, so I definitely believe in the integrity. I believe journalism still has a lot of integrity. We're just in a very interesting climate where we're trying to, with AI, with Chat GPT, you know, really dumb down the intellectuality of Americans, right? So then we can continue, right? Washing our stories away. We can continue keeping Americans at a fifth grade reading level. That's literally what we're at. We're at a fifth grade reading level. When I'm told to write, I'm told to write at a fifth grade reading level. Okay. So education is equity. I don't want you to get into debt over education. So this is why, as community and elders, let's teach and share our resources. Stop gatekeeping. Stop gatekeeping.
Yeah.
If you know something that is valid and credible and it can be of resource to other people, share it. That's it.
Share it.
That's it for me.
Support it. Hit the like, people. Quit watching the video and not hitting like. Oh my gosh.
Also that.
Yes. Yes.
Also that.
Absolutely.
It's really important right
Absolutely.
now. Last thing I want to say, sorry. It's really important right now
Yeah,
that
no, of
we
course.
get over this Latino mindset of, I gotta do better than the next person. I can't see my prima do better, right? I gotta make more money than my auntie and my primo, right? Like, my kids gotta look better than, my sister's kids, or, like, there's another Latina in the office, right? I gotta be the HBIC Latina. She can't make more than me, so I'm gonna stomp on her, right? We have to stop that. This is the administration where we have to literally support and uplift each other. We have to share our money with each other. We have to share our resources with each other, because they're already choking us out. So if we keep stomping on each other and choking ourselves out, why do you
Yep.
think we're struggling? We have to create opportunities for ourselves, and we have to stop that competitive mindset in Latino community, in the Latinx community. That shit is played out.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the only way to do it is to support each other and let that go.
Yeah.
I support you, you support me,
Yeah.
right? Today you, tomorrow me. Absolutely.
Absolutely.
And it goes both ways with what's happening horribly in the country with people being targeted, right?
Mhm.
It doesn't matter what culture it is. If they're being targeted today, tomorrow it's going to be us. And so
Mhm.
why not support Latinos right now through what's happening?
Right.
Because
Right.
what's
And
to
then
say tomorrow is not another subculture, right?
one more, like, I don't want to get preachy, but one thing that I try to hold myself accountable is making sure that I'm being an ally and upholding allyship to Black and Indigenous people, obviously Asian Americans, but especially Black and Indigenous people, because you already know, right? You already know. So all of us, you know.
The parallels are there.
Mm-hmm.
I know, without going too deep into that could be another podcast too, right?
Mm-hmm.
Of like the embrace that we feel in the Black and Indigenous communities, although we're Indigenous too, right? But then at the same time, there is this polarization and like pushing back and not wanting to support each other when, hello, quite literally going through the same suffering right now. Obviously the histories are different, but they're also similar. It's crazy.
Yeah.
It's crazy. And so to not be an ally right now, yeah, it's difficult when you hear the conversations that are happening, or even feeling like you have to almost convince or explain why that makes sense to support and be an ally to those communities. Yeah, you're just like, what year is it, y'all? Do we not know the history? Like, why are we, right?
Yeah.
But I think you're right. It's important to speak about it loudly and make sure that folks know, because no action is also action too, right?
Yes.
Silence is also a message too.
Yes.
And yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Thank
Jasmin
you, Olga.
Alejandrez, absolutely, founder of Soul Minati. I am
Uh-huh.
so honored that I got to talk to you on my birthday. I'm really proud and I'm rooting for you.
Thank you.
And I hope that we get to talk more.
Absolutely.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, everyone, for tuning in. And thank you, Olga, and the team for organizing this. They worked really hard. So, all right, y'all.
Thank you.
Take care.
Goodbye.
Thank you for joining us on the Latina Leadership Podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to like, subscribe, and share it with your amigas, comadres, hermanas, your mom, your tias, or anyone who you think would enjoy the conversation. The Latina Leadership Podcast is a weekly video and audio podcast since 2020. Visit our online Latina Leaders Directory, join our growing community of Latina changemakers, keep up with our calendar of events, or reach out to us if you're interested in supporting the Latina Leadership Podcast by visiting our website at latinaleadershippodcast.com. And with that, we'll see you next time.